see a bad moon rising.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Crisis Report. It is March 2nd, 2025. We're going to do a bit of an exclusive on all that has happened since the Zelensky and Trump Oval Office blow-up. I guess that's the best way to describe it. But there is a bit of an aftermath that is going on, and I just want to give some thoughts and everything, so I'm going to recap kind of what's happened since. And basically, Zelensky was invited to go to the White House, and they had all kinds of things set up. They had the paperwork and the notebooks all ready to sign. Everything was agreed, and it was a bit of a scaled-down version of the original plan, but it was a version, and it essentially made it so this rare earth deal would be the backbone of a ceasefire and some concessions, but all in all, the ending of what many people affectionately call the Russian meat grinder. And if you know what's going on in the battlefield right now, it is not going well for the country, the Ukers. They are having major parts of their country taken, swallowed up. It's gradual, but it's accelerating. They're not really in a position of true negotiation. And unless basically Europe or the United States decides that they want to full-on engage and bring not just weapons, but also soldiers and manpower from a coalition of the willing, that this is as good as it gets. So you have a few options here. You continue going on, and then eventually, after tens of thousands of lives, the Ukrainians either lose their entire country or they lose most of it, and the Russians control it, and there you go. Or you bring in a fighting force from Europe and it turns into World War III. Or you sign these deals, you give up portions of your country, and you not enter into NATO, and you make it so there is a tenuous but formed ceasefire in peace. That's essentially what Trump had and wanted to do. Trump is wanting to put his signature on this thing because he did say he would have it all signed and he would have a peace deal within the first 24 hours, politics, all that. But to get it done in the first 6 months of his presidency would be incredibly impressive. He had everybody on board. And then what happened was Zelensky, when he was in the Oval Office, started to add things, started to overtalk and try to initiate little addendums and things in front of the press, hoping that the usual spineless politicians sitting next to him would concede on air, and this would help him in his position. The problem is, this is no longer 2022. This is no longer a guy that is seen as an international rock star. He's not going to parties. He's got a country that has not had an election in many years and is currently under martial law. There's video out there today of people in his country that are being forcibly shoved into vans to be taken to the front line. And they can come out with all the polls they want, but, we all know about polls. Simple fact of the matter is that the people of his country are tired. They're used to watching their sons and fathers go off and not return. I'd love to see what the number of cemeteries has increased in the last 3 years, because I can assure you it's a lot. And the Russians are losing as well. So it's both sides. But stopping the meat grinder, stopping the war, honestly, in the ultimate scheme of things, even with concessions, for the world would be the best thing. But that's not what's going to happen. Because this is 2025, it's not 2022. And we've had 1.5 million people dead because of this. So Zelensky starts correcting Vance, and then he goes on to Trump, and they just were not having it. And because of that, and I think Zelensky's arrogance in thinking that he can do this, which he's been able to do with Europe, he has a new regime, and the Trump-Vance team are not playing that game anymore. Vance really isn't into the war. He's been on numerous shows saying he could care less what happens to Ukraine. Also, he had a good point that it doesn't matter because we don't have the manufacturing base that we used to. We can make all these fancy promises, but the problem is we don't have anything to back it up anymore. We don't have that ability. We don't have the ability to make numerous munitions. We just don't have the manufacturing. So getting into a conflict, even by proxy or directly and full on, is a fool's game. The Russians are firing on all cylinders when it comes to their war production. They are. The Europeans are not. The Americans are not. We're barely able to cobble together war production. For everything that we produce, the Russians produce 5. In fact, that's probably a low number. So one has to ask, what is the victory plan for all of this? What are you going to do? How are we going to win the war? Okay, because they keep saying, well, we're going to wait for victory. Well, what is that? What does that look like? Just keep grinding away until Russia stops? No, that's not going to happen. There's more of them. Keep tapping into Western resources and everything else. Well, as you can see right now, new regimes come in. Eventually, there will be new regimes in Europe, and there's a lot of them that are growing that are very tired of all this. And the Europeans don't have the military, the structure, the production, anything to fight them alone. So they want America to do it. And that's probably not going to be a winning solution, because now the Americans are not really into this whole conflict. The Americans are focused on Israel and what's going on in the Middle East. And they want this to be wrapped up so they can fully focus on that. And there's problems there. So Trump just sent another $3 billion. They did an emergency thing. Ceasefires are currently ongoing, but they're extremely tenuous. They're weak in the Middle East. And you're probably going to see some form of conflict between Israel and the northwestern portion of Syria because of the Druze, which they're saying that, that's to help the Druze people, but honestly, it's to expand them into more territory. But that's going to be the focus of America going on and going forward. So he needs to get this ceasefire deal done. So if there is a ceasefire that happens, some good things happen. Western companies are able to go in. Western companies get the contracts. Western companies rebuild. Zelensky, however, will need to, step down. He will need to have a new election. He can run for it, but if you look really at honest polling, Zelensky is the guy that's going to be taking over. He's the ambassador to England right now, UK. So he probably won't win an election, but that means he's got to step down. But, for people that are sitting there crying and telling us about how this is fighting for democracy, there currently isn't one in this country. Now, they're citing martial law and all that, so there's active conflict going. It's understandable in certain ways. But at the same time, one could make the case that Zelensky really doesn't want this conflict to end, because if it ends, more than likely, his tenure as the president or prime minister, whatever the heck they call him, will be over. And he will have to go and do something else with his life. I think he likes being gallivanting along the world and being in front of the cameras. I mean, he's a former comedian. I can tell you, as a former comedian myself and a performer that's done most forms of modern entertainment, from playing music to theatrical to comedy shows. He loves the stage. So that is another issue. So what from here? How does that happen? Can he wait for the Democrats to come in? Well, it's going to be 4 years before that happens. Maybe there'll be another impeachment. I mean, they have tried it, 2-3 times? They don't have people in the House. There's not enough people in the Senate. So that's not really an option. I don't think they can wait for years. So is it a matter of arming? Do we need to arm them up? Well, honestly, Ukraine has more weapons than most of the NATO countries. They've got the backing of basically a NATO structure without the name. So the question is, can Russia be deterred? I think the answer right now is no. They're not going to be deterred. The other question is, when will they stop? At what point, at what border? That's the importance of a ceasefire and getting that all in writing, because as it stands right now, Russia just can keep pushing west, and they will. And they're doing it in a very methodical way. If they wanted to go American style and do what we do, which is we turn an entire country or landmass into rubble and then set up communication stations and then actively rule over that rubble with good telephone service, they're being very strategic, because they know it's in their minds, it's their people. These are their native ancestry. So we could have resource development and building, or we could just have more war. Keep going. And this has been going on basically since 2014. So the Europeans and Canada are also talking about maybe starting a second NATO or a new NATO or something like it. The problem is that they don't have the pay. And if this is Trump trying to make Europe pay its fair share of NATO, which he's been doing since his first term, he is doing that. The United States pays 16% of NATO's budget. It puts up all kinds of tariffs and sanctions, and because of that, Europe has a trade surplus of 160 billion, and ours is always and consistently in the negative, especially when you look at other countries like China. Europe is in a recession, even though they're not saying that out loud. America is not far behind. We're somehow treading water. But this will eventually wear down on our economy. So getting all of this done and wrapped up does have a financial benefit. Our goals are not all aligned, not with Mr. Zelensky and not with Europe. Trump is not stupid. He knows that if this keeps going and the Europeans keep pushing, this really could send us into a, how do I put it? Something like the, it will eventually turn into World War III. Eventually you will have European, American forces, NATO, fighting against Russia. So I think Trump knows that that is a very potential future. And so to stop that, we should probably try to get something in paper, on pen and paper right now. So you've got the ideals of the Western globalists and, of course, the progressive fascists in our country. And then you have reality. The goals, the pie in the sky idea is that eventually Ukraine will win the war. And I don't really see that happening. The truth of the matter is, the reality of it all, is that this will keep going and grinding down on our economies and grinding down on our militaries and grinding down on our people until we either concede all this and get the ceasefire, or it does go to World War III. So everybody getting mad at Trump for fighting in the White House, they're not seeing the big picture. And the big picture is that we either start to work towards a peace now, or we're going to have a World War III later. And not too distant later either. So that is where we stand. I just wanted to give an update, and I'll be doing the crisis report live tonight. It's going to be a big one, but I'm going to start to do more of these. I appreciate you. We are getting hit by the algo and all that, so the more you share out and everything, the better it helps. At this point, I'm just going to keep making videos or whatever, and they want to treat all of us like crap. They can treat us like crap. That's what they do. But I'm not going anywhere. So eventually they will change, because honestly, the world is changing. People don't want the status quo anymore. And these ideals that have been pushed for, well, at least a decade of the neoliberal world order, well, they're soundly being rebuked. And people are starting to figure it out that that's going to lead to ruin. All right, friends, thanks so much for being here. Hit the buttons and stuff. Check out the links in the description. We appreciate you. Share us out. Tell people about what we're doing here at the Crisis Report. God bless you all, and we will see you on the next one.